Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to unpack complex topics, really get into the details, and pull out the key takeaways for you.
Exactly.
And today, we are setting our sights on a city that, well, pretty much defines modern metropolis for a lot of people.
New York City.
New York City, yeah. Our mission for this deep dive is to kind of journey through its incredible history. We're starting way back 17th century and bringing it all the way up to, the Times Square we see today.
Mm-hmm.
And pulling out those important insights and maybe some surprising facts, too.
And we'll be drawing on excerpts from New York, from village to metropolis, as our guide. It's a great source for peeling back the layers.
Fantastic. So, okay, let's rewind. Way back. I mean, what's really amazing right off the bat is that before any Europeans showed up, the area we call New York, it was home to the Lenape tribe. And not just for a little while, for thousands of years.
Thousands. It really does put things in perspective.
It does.
And it's so important to remember, this wasn't, just empty land waiting.
Mm-hmm.
The Lenape were the original inhabitants. They had a whole way of life here, fishing, farming, living right there on what's now Manhattan.
And they had their own name for it, which I find fascinating. Mannahatta.
Mannahatta, meaning island of many hills.
Island of many hills. Does that name itself kind of give us a clue about how they saw the land, maybe differently than the Europeans who came later?
Oh, absolutely. A profound difference, actually. Mannahatta isn't just like a map label. It speaks to a relationship. It suggests a place of, natural richness, shaped by those hills and water. For the Lenape, it was alive, not just property.
Right. Not real estate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which sets up a pretty stark contrast with what came next.
Okay, so picture that. Mannahatta, vibrant, lived in for millennia. Then boom, 1624.
Yeah.
Suddenly, European ships, Dutch East India Company traders arrive. And they weren't just passing through, were they?
No, definitely not. They came to establish a presence. They pretty quickly claimed the whole region, called it New Netherland.
New Netherland. So
Yeah.
this was the start of a permanent colonial thing.
That was the plan. It was about laying the groundwork.
And this is where we get that famous story, the purchase of Manhattan.
Right. For some beads and things.
Yeah, the beads and trinkets. Why is that specific detail, even if it's maybe simplified over time, why is it so important for understanding how the city started?
Well, it's crucial because it kind of highlights maybe the fundamental misunderstanding, or maybe even the exploitation really at the heart of it all. The Dutch saw it as buying land, title acquired. Done.
Okay.
But for the Lenape, culturally, land wasn't really something you sold like that. It was probably more like an agreement to share the space, not give it up forever.
That makes sense.
So that single transaction, for what seems like, almost nothing now,
Yeah.
it set the legal precedent from the European view for owning that land. It paved the way. And then just 2 years later, 1626, it gets its official name. New Amsterdam.
New Amsterdam.
And that name really cemented it.
Yeah.
This was a commercial venture for the Dutch, pure and simple. Its location, that amazing natural harbor.
Right.
It wasn't just convenient, it was like a golden ticket strategically. It linked North American resources, furs, timber to the whole world.
Yeah.
That really set the stage for New York becoming this global economic hub later on.
A foundation built on trade right from the start. Okay, so the Dutch have New Amsterdam, it's buzzing, but their chapter is, relatively brief in the grand scheme.
Relatively.
Because by 1664, another power is making moves. The British arrive and take control. Was that a big fight?
Surprisingly, no. Not really a fight. It was pretty swift, actually, and almost bloodless. The British Navy just sailed in and said, okay, it's ours now.
Oh.
New Amsterdam wasn't super well defended at that point. The governor, Peter Stuyvesant, he wanted to resist, apparently, but the citizens kind of convinced him not to avoid destruction.
So they just handed it over.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And the British didn't waste any time.
Okay.
Right away, they renamed it New York.
New York, in honor of the Duke of York.
Exactly. It was a clear signal, a rebranding, you could say, showing the shift in who is in charge and their imperial ambitions.
And under the British, the city really starts to grow, doesn't it? It becomes a major center in the colonies. What made it so key for them?
Well, again, it comes back to that harbor.
The port. Always the port.
Always the port. It was ice-free, deep, centrally located on the coast, just ideal for trade ships, but also for the military. It became this vital link in the whole British trade network connecting Britain, the Caribbean, North America. That location was just gold.
And that importance only grows, right? As we get closer to the late 1700s, the American Revolution, New York is right in the thick of it.
Absolutely central. But it was complicated.
How so?
Well, it was strategically vital for both sides. If the revolutionaries held New York, they controlled the Hudson River, which could basically split the colonies.
Right.
But at the same time, the city had a lot of loyalists, people loyal to the British crown. Yeah. And it became the main British base of operations.
So a divided city.
Deeply divided. That's why you see George Washington fighting the Battle of Brooklyn there in 1776. It was a huge early battle.
But the British won that one.
They did, and they held on to New York City for almost the entire war. It was their headquarters, their main military and naval base in America.
Wow. So for years, New York was basically occupied territory during the Revolution.
Essentially, yes.
But eventually, the war ends. 1783, the British finally leave, hand the city over to the new United States. Must have been quite a moment.
A huge moment. Liberation, a new beginning.
You know, something that really jumped out at me from the source material, something I genuinely didn't know or maybe forgot.
Yeah.
New York City was the first capital of the United States.
Briefly, in 1789.
That's right. Not Washington, D.C., not Philly initially.
Yeah.
New York.
Why New York, and what was that like?
Well, it was chosen partly because it was already a major city. You know, it had the port, the infrastructure, the energy. It felt like the place to launch a new nation.
And yeah, George Washington took his oath as the first president right there at Federal Hall on Wall Street. Imagine that scene. It really symbolized the start of the federal government.
Incredible.
Yeah.
But it didn't last long as the capital.
Nope. Just a few years later, the decision was made to build a new capital city, Washington, D.C.
I guess New York was already becoming a different kind of capital, even then.
I think that's right. Its destiny was more economic and cultural, perhaps.
Yeah.
And the next century, the 1800s, that really cemented it. That's when you see this just enormous transformation driven by, well, immigration.
Enormous doesn't even cover it, does it? The 19th century wasn't just more people came. It feels like it completely remade the city's DNA.
Absolutely. People pouring in from Ireland, Italy, Germany, Eastern Europe, so many places, all looking for something new, some opportunity.
What did that do to the city's character, all those different people arriving?
It forged its identity, really. That whole melting pot idea, maybe cliche now, but it was real. It created this constant buzz, this incredible diversity. It fueled the growth, the culture. And that's when you get landmarks like Ellis Island becoming these potent symbols.
Ellis Island, the Statue of Liberty. Icons of hope.
Exactly. Symbols for millions arriving, hoping for a fresh start. The city itself became this intricate tapestry of different cultures and languages.
Nice. And while all these people are arriving, the city itself is physically changing in huge ways. Big infrastructure projects.
Massive projects. Things that shaped the modern city.
Like Central Park, right?
Yeah.
1857. Creating this huge green space right in the middle.
A radical idea at the time. Deliberately setting aside valuable land for public use for everyone, it showed real foresight, recognizing the need for that in a dense city.
And then the Brooklyn Bridge, finished in 1883. Just an engineering marvel.
Totally. Connecting Brooklyn and Manhattan physically for the first time. It wasn't just a bridge. It was a statement about ambition, about connecting things, enabling more growth. Both projects showed the city investing big in its own future.
Okay, so fast forward a bit. Early 1900s, New York's just accelerating. It's America's biggest city, busiest port, top commercial center, a real powerhouse.
It truly is. Trade is still huge, but something else is literally rising.
Skyscrapers.
The city starts going vertical, land's getting scarce and expensive, technology allows for building higher, and you get this explosion.
And the Empire State Building, 1931, is kind of the peak of that, isn't it?
The iconic example, yeah. A symbol of that ambition, reaching for the sky. It defined the city's skyline and its aspirations.
And around the same time, you've got Wall Street cementing itself as the global financial center.
Absolutely. Finance, commerce, power. It all seems centered right there, almost unstoppable.
Almost, but then
comes the crash, the Great Depression in the 1930s.
Right. That must have hit New York incredibly hard, being the financial center.
Devastatingly hard. Widespread unemployment, hardship. It really tested the city's strength, its resilience.
But New York is nothing if not resilient, it seems. It bounced back.
Well, it wasn't just luck. There was active effort. Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal programs played a huge role.
Right, things like the WPA.
Exactly, the Works Progress Administration, the CCC. These federal programs put people back to work, building infrastructure parks, bridges, roads, things the city still benefits from today. It was a way to rebuild both the economy and morale.
So it's this pattern again, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Challenge, adaptation, reinvention.
That seems to be the New York story, again and again.
So wrapping this up, we've traced this amazing path from Manhattan, this Lenape island, through Dutch and British rule, revolution, becoming this immigrant gateway, a financial titan, weathering the Depression, arriving at the global metropolis we see now. It's quite a ride.
It really is. And as you listening, think back over this history. What part stands out most to you?
Yeah.
Is it the sheer speed of change, the incredible mix of people, or maybe just its ability to keep bouncing back?
And maybe a final thought to leave you with. Think about how New York's identity isn't just captured in, like, the Empire State Building or Wall Street.
Right.
It seems so profoundly shaped by this constant churn, this process of absorbing new people, new ideas, and reinventing itself over and over. What does that continuous evolution mean for where it goes next? Yeah. And how does that incredibly dynamic past still shape the New York of right now?